Hello, this is Jason and welcome to the Squared Away Workshop. Today we're going to do a few upgrades to the old planer cart here. I hope you enjoy. Stick around. So I built this cart long before I started making videos. Like most of my tools in my shop, it's got casters on it so I can move it around when I need to. I wanted to be able to store it up against a wall because I don't really use this thing very often. It may be once a year, but I wanted to make sure that when I was ready to use it, I could just pull it out, set it up anywhere in my shop and complete the project. Because I was thinking about storage, I wanted to be able to push it up as far against the wall as possible, but I also wanted an outfeed table. So what I came up with is this outfeed table that lifts up, and in the front here you'll see that I made some outfeed rollers. I used PVC pipe with a larger inside diameter than the outside diameter on the dowel rod so that they would roll freely. So all you have to do is take this, slide it into these channels on the back part, and then lift it up, and now you have an outfeed table for the planer. The only problem with this setup is I didn't want to put legs down here because my floor of my shop is not very level. So I came up with these things, and I have one on each side to hold it in place. The problem with these are that they don't really hold the back part up well enough, so I'm getting a little bit of a dip here. So what I plan to do today is I plan to come up with something that will come down from this side to support the outfeed table on this end, and maybe even have some type of adjustment so that if I'm in a different area of my shop that the floor is not level, I can adjust this leg to make sure that the outfeed is level on this end as well as this end. I also want to change out the casters. I've got locking casters on it now and I really don't like them. Every now and then the lock gets bumped, and when I go to move it, it'll get caught. I may even move the casters to the outside of the frame just to make it a little bit more stable. So let's go ahead and get this thing taken apart, and we'll look at the different components that I could change out to make it better. So the first thing I want to do is change the casters. I don't like these casters. They're hard plastic. So I've got these. First of all, they're not locking casters because I hate locking casters. They have a rubber texture so it grips a little bit better in the shop on the concrete floor. The other thing that I want to do is I've got these 2x4 blocks with a 45 cut on them. I'm going to mount them to the side of the frame. This way I can bring the casters a little bit further to the edge and then a little bit further out, just to make the cart more stable when it's rolling around. I'm going to do this work over my downdraft table so that when I'm drilling, all of the sawdust falls down into the table. Keeps my shop a little bit cleaner.
That boy is good.
So there it is. I think that's going to work out a lot better. Like I said, it's just going to make the wheels go out a little bit wider, make it more sturdy as it's moving around. So let's start working on the outfeed table. So I made these jigs here that I can clamp on here and here. So if you're wondering what these are for, this represents the height of the deck of the planer. So I measured it before I took the planer off from the deck down to the surface. So I just duplicated that with this jig so that way once I get this ready to go, I can use this to put the level on to make sure that the outfeed rollers are exactly level with where the planer will be. So I've got my level clamped down to those jigs, and you can see the amount of fall that I'm having on this end. So obviously I need to have better support on this end. I may even have to take the hinges out, which you can see there, and adjust them, because even if I push up, there's still a little bit of gap that I've got to close in, which means that one side of this hinge needs to be adjusted. So I've got one side of this hinge free, and I've got it clamped really good. And if you've ever seen these clamps, you could turn this around and use it as a spreader or like a jack, which is what I'm about to do. So I'm going to turn this, and hopefully we can get that gap to close in. So it looks like I'm not going to be able to do it because I've got to adjust this clamp. So let me get another clamp on there so that I can move it up and then readjust this one. So I've got this adjusted pretty good now, especially the rear outfeeders are going to be connecting really well with the wood from the deck of the planer. I ended up changing out the hinges to some old door frames. They're not beautiful, but as you can tell, I am not wanting to spend any money on this project. As a matter of fact, when I built this, I bought all of the lumber from the scrap lumber section of Home Depot. So I don't have much money in this thing at all. I've got some old scrap plywood, an old scrap 2x4, and a piece of poplar, which I'm going to have to rip down on the table saw. But what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to build a frame to connect to the bottom side here, and then the poplar in the middle, and a frame to go on the floor to connect to that 2x4. And I'm going to connect this to the piece of poplar, run a guide in the plywood frame so that I could adjust it as I need up and down. So here's what I've got so far. This is the basic design. I've got this channel that I'm going to cut out, and this bolt will ride in that channel, and this will be connected to this piece of poplar, so it'll be stationary on the poplar, and the poplar will be connected to the foot. I might make it a little wider at the bottom. This will connect in there with a hinge, so this will come down, and that way I will be able to adjust the foot that goes to the ground. So I have to admit that my first design didn't really come out all that well. This is how it came out. I could have cleaned it up, made it look a little bit better, but the problem that I was having is the leg wouldn't, there was nothing to hold the leg in. So let me show you what I came up with instead. Here's the final design. And if you look back here, I created this channel and then put this cover on. The cover's just got some screws holding it in, so if I ever need to replace the leg or work on it, it will be easy to take out. What I haven't come up with is how to keep this attached up in here. I tried to do a magnet here, as you can see, but it's really not strong enough to hold it. So I'll come up with something later. It's really not all that important, because once I fold it down, I could just hold it up. And once this folds down, it holds it in place anyway. So now it's all complete. I know that I say that I hate locking casters, and I do. But there's still a need to lock the wheels, because when you're pushing material through the planer, it can push the planer forward and also compromise the new leg that we have. So what I did was I had some leftover material from when I made my French cleat, and I just added some drawer non-grip material. I don't really know what you call it. I use this all the time in the shop. I just sprayed some adhesive spray on it, stuck it to the bottom, so now it'll grip to the floor, and this will act as a chock for the wheels. It just stores right here on the front, so when we get it set up, we can lock the wheels in place and we're ready to go. So let's go ahead and set the planer up, try it out, and see how the Outfeed rollers work. So it looks like that came out pretty good. Let's run a board through it and see how it works. The only thing that I really have is an old fence board, but it doesn't really matter. I just want to make sure that the rollers are feeding the board well. I've got the dust collection hooked up to my table. If you want more information on this, check out my last video on the squared away workbench. So it looks like it worked pretty well. All the rollers connected with the board as it went across. There was no drop after it came out of the planer. So I think it came out good. Also, if you notice, the dust collector worked pretty good too. So as you can see, it stores nicely against the wall and it's ready to go whenever I need it, which I don't really need it a whole lot. So as usual, it's not perfect, but it does serve the purpose. Well, I hope you enjoyed. All right, check you later. Bye.